Hello, you're watching Afghan News with Mohsen Jamal. President Hamid Karzai was to hold talks in Pakistan on Friday, likely to focus on stepping away force to negotiate peace with the Taliban after nearly a decade of conflict in both countries. The visit comes 6 weeks after US Navy SEALs killed Osama bin Laden in the Pakistani city of Abbottabad on May 2nd, which has heightened calls within the United States for a peace settlement in Afghanistan. It will also road test relations between Kabul and Islamabad, which became more tense after Afghanistan seized on the bin Laden raid as proof that the war on terror would be better fought in Pakistan than in Afghanistan. Karzai will hold talks with Pakistani President Asif Ali Zardari and Prime Minister Yusuf Raza Gilani. During the two-day visit, a joint peace commission involving officials from both countries is also scheduled to meet. NATO defense ministers discussed Afghanistan on Thursday as violence escalated in the 10th year of an increasingly unpopular war. NATO failed on Wednesday to win more public commitments for its military operation in Libya, while members agreed to reform the alliance's command structure to reduce costs. The second day of the meeting was set to focus on Afghanistan, where Afghan and foreign security forces as well as government officials are often targeted in attacks by the insurgents. NATO Secretary General Anders Fogh Rasmussen reiterated that transition to the Afghan forces was underway and intention was to have withdrawn by 2014. He called on the Taliban to make the right choice. U.S. Defense Secretary Robert Gates said on Thursday there would be no hasty U.S. troop withdrawal from Afghanistan, and Washington expected the same from its allies. Gates, is speaking ahead of the start of President Barack Obama's planned troop cuts in Afghanistan next month, said a rush to the exits would jeopardize military in Afghanistan. It was Gates' last meeting at NATO as U.S. Defense Secretary, and he decided to share his views on the situation in Afghanistan and Pakistan. Gates said more attention should have been given to the Afghan President Hamid Karzai when he said he was concerned over civilian casualties. Gates also said money has been wasted in Afghanistan, and he suggested the establishment of a whistleblowing hotline available to all US and NATO military staff if they think the United States government and the military are being ripped off. U.S. Defense Secretary nominee Leon Panetta said Thursday he backed pulling a significant number of troops from Afghanistan next month in a break with outgoing Pentagon Chief Robert Gates. Panetta told Senate Armed Services Committee Chairman Carl Levin, a Democrat who had asked his view on President Barack Obama's pledge to announce a significant drawdown next month. While Panetta, the current CIA chief, repeatedly praised Gates and sought to assure the panel that he would follow in his footsteps, the answers seem to put the two at odds as Washington works to put Afghans in charge of their own security by 2014, but a precise number of troops that should go is unclear. Panetta, 72, were to reassure some lawmakers worried a hasty pullout could spell defeat in Afghanistan, and others upset by what Republican Senator Susan Collins called a never-ending mission to stabilize the strife-torn country. A roadside bomb struck a vehicle carrying paramilitary troops in Pakistan's southwestern Baluchistan province on Thursday, killing 2 soldiers and wounding 3, a local government official said. The incident took place at Dasht area, about 30 kilometers from Quetta, the capital of Baluchistan province. There has been no immediate claim of responsibility for the blast. Elsewhere, Pakistani paramilitary authorities said on Thursday they were investigating the killing of a teenage boy by its personnel a day earlier, which was caught on camera and broadcast by local television channels. The video showed the unarmed teenage boy, identified later as Sarafraz Shah, being shot at point-blank range in a public park in an upscale Karachi neighborhood. More than 2,400 Syrians have fled into neighboring Turkey to escape the unrest in Jezreel, Shughur and other towns, according to the UN and Turkish officials. Refugees started entering Turkey on April 29th, according to the UN High Commissioner for Refugees, but the flow of refugees people crossed the border in the last 24 hours, the UNHCR said on Thursday. Turkish Prime Minister Recep Tayyip Erdogan said on Wednesday that Turkey will not close its doors to Syrians fleeing conflict, while urging Syrian President Bashar al-Assad's government to change its attitude towards civilians. This comes as Lebanon, Syria's neighbor to the west, has already absorbed some 5,000 refugees, though the UN says it is a fluid population and some of the refugees have already returned home. Pro- and anti-regime camps in Yemen have called for mass protests on Friday after state media said embattled President Ali Abdullah Saleh would soon return to the country from Saudi Arabia, where he is being treated for blast wounds. Regime supporters have called for a mass gathering for his planned return, but opponents said they were working to ensure that even if he does, he will no longer be in power. US and Yemeni officials have said Saleh, 69, had 40% burns on his body after an attack on his palace last Friday, but a government website dismissed dire assessments of his condition, saying his injuries were minor. Saleh, who has ruled Yemen for 3 decades, has not been seen since being flown for surgery to Saudi Arabia. Muammar Gaddafi's days as leader of Libya are numbered. Hillary Clinton, the U.S. Secretary of State, has said at the International Contact Group on Libya meeting in Abu Dhabi. Clinton on Thursday said talks were underway with people close to the Libyan leader and that there was the potential for a transition of power in Libya, giving no further details other than to say there is not any clear way forward yet. Donors at the ICG meeting pledged more than $1.3 billion to help support the National Transitional Council, the main body representing the Libyan rebels fighting against Gaddafi. Clinton said, "We are ready for the establishment of financial mechanism for the money to flow to the National Transitional Council." Meanwhile, NATO continued its airstrikes on Thursday with bombing runs believed to have targeted the outskirts of Tripoli. Iraq will ask the United States to keep its troops in the country beyond the 2011 withdrawal deadline set by the U.S. President Barack Obama. Leon Panetta, the White House's pick to lead the Pentagon, said the outgoing CIA chief told the Senate Armed Services Committee on Thursday that the U.S. should agree once the request is made and that he had every confidence the request would be forthcoming at some point. Outgoing U.S. Defense Secretary Robert Gates has publicly suggested that Iran is another reason to keep U.S. forces in Iraq. Elsewhere, Iraqi Prime Minister Nouri al-Maliki's coalition government is debating whether to ask Washington to keep some of the 47,000 U.S. troops in Iraq, if only in a training and advisory role. And the last but not the least, Secretary of State Hillary Clinton has been in discussions with the White House about leaving her job next year to become head of the World Bank. Sources familiar with the discussion said on Thursday the former First Lady and one-time political rival to President Barack Obama quickly became one of the most influential members of his cabinet after she began her tenure at State in early 2009. She has said publicly she did not plan to stay on at the State Department for more than 4 years, with associates saying that Clinton has expressed interest in having the World Bank job should the bank's current president, Robert Zoellick, leave at the end of his term in the middle of 2012. A second source also said Clinton wants the position, while a third source said Obama had already expressed support for the change in her role. White House Press Secretary Jay Carney and a spokesman for Clinton, meanwhile, Philip Rines, denied Clinton wanted the job. And that's all for now. Thanks for joining us.